Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in on our first intro show. My name is Derek, and welcome to the Dawn of Derek's Comics, a new show that will be mainly focused on following and sharing content for the new era of DC Comics that is starting this year, that has been dubbed the Dawn of DC Initiative. So before we get too into just like the foundational stuff of what we'll be covering on this show for Dawn of DC, like which titles and everything and some dates for everything that's coming up, I just want to do a little bit of like, hey, this is, a little bit about myself. Obviously, I will go a lot more in depth like throughout like the shows as people get to know me. But I also know that I can't help myself from tangenting off a bit. I am an actor, have been most of my life a performer. I am taking a break right now and sort of trying to focus on moving into a new phase. Working more like on my mental health and everything right now and building support systems for myself. Figuring out the next really like phase of really what I want to be doing. I still want to be, involved in creating content in my life and being a part of productions, but the actual heavy grind of what I was doing and the value of my identity that I put into for most of my life to the level of performer I was and the comparisons that I would do were just not healthy and good. And I'm able to, because of therapy now, really look back on the stuff that I have achieved and the voiceover work in video games and such that I have done and been a part of. Given my life and situations and my disorders, being a performer with autism and very heavily with ADHD as well. I'm very proud that, given growing up in poverty as well my whole life, what I've been able to accomplish. And with that newfounded push of, wanting to show more of me for once, because what got me into performing was being able to hide as these characters and get this sort of like love and appreciation that I felt like there was no way I could get being myself. By being these characters. And my therapist really pushed me a lot to, why don't you create a show, create a content show. I have slowly collected little bits of like larger trade paperbacks and stuff, more mainstream famous titles and such, but only in the last year have I started actually building more curated collections that happen in the post-crisis 1985 era up until Dark Crisis on Infinite Earth, which is what has just happened recently. That really put an end cap on a lot of the characters that us millennial and Gen Z, etc. Generations have grown up on. These characters from this post-crisis era, that's more like my specialty, and to have this finally have some closure where everything has ended has been very satisfying. With Dark Crisis and Tom Taylor's Nightwing really putting a good final point for us to transition into something new. Lots of great new young writers are about to start this new Dawn of DC era, writers that are like my age, from like our generations, that have a lot of great things to say and great ways to push and evolve these characters. They're also going to move a lot more of the characters that have been around since like the 40s into more, I would say, like background type roles where they're still going to get their dues, but a lot more of who's frontlining the DC now are people like Nightwing and the Titans, and like Wally West as the Flash, and a lot of like more, and Jonathan Kent, possibly moving on to be like the new Superman. That's really like what Tom Taylor and Joshua Williams, like, and a lot of these great writers really want to have happen, are these newer, younger children sort of these characters, like, really taking over the mantles, like, in a way that they are the faces of DC now. And even moving on from Justice League into things where the Titans, which are sort of like a mixture of Teen Titans and Young Justice, like, together, is going to be just a very exciting thing. But yes, sorry, again, already tangenting off. This is me. But no, through therapy, my therapist was just like, this seems like a perfect time for you to start, collecting them issue to issue, but also like showing people and sharing, you to people, because that's something I've really never done much in my life. I've been a very agoraphobic person, and I've very used alters and characters to hide a lot in plain sight most of my life. And sharing myself, actually me, with people is a very new and scary thing for me. So I apologize, for aggressive rambling and nervousness, which will eventually come, and this will be more enjoyable on your end in the future, I promise. But yes, I'm very excited to start getting to do this as something personally for me, but also it also just lines up perfectly with, this is like, a dawn of my comic collection, a dawn of a new like era in my life, and also a dawn of a new era for DC, because we're both like resetting the DC film and universe and television universe and everything, and as well as the comics. And the reason why I've always been such a huge DC fan, because I do love Marvel as well, but one reason I've always loved DC a little bit more has been the continuity and the way everything webs together. What I've always loved was very much like like Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien work, Stephen King stuff. Just like I'm a storyteller, and I'm very big at world building, and I've always loved people that could, for huge periods of times and throughout many different writers, like stay almost make sure everybody's sort of on the same page, where you're telling your own stories, but everything finds a way to be connected together. And I've always felt that DC has done that a little bit better than Marvel has, especially with the way that they connect things through their major events. I just feel like it's been very awesome. So we've had two huge eras go through, from like the 40s up until the 80s, and then post-crisis up until now, and I really feel like that this dawn of DC is going to be a big new era that 25, 30 years from now we'll just possibly be finishing up, and we'll be able to look back on. And a lot of what I think is going to be created now in collecting now for comics, and a lot of characters that are gaining more popularity, getting their own like original runs, getting more time in the limelight, and new characters that will be created and people fall in love with over this next bit of time, will be what future films, movies, TV shows, and content gets made about, and what future generations are going to be, their Barry Allens, their Kal-Els, are going to be the characters, from the stuff that's being more talked about today and being created today. And I love being, sort of a part of that, because I feel like, when I was born, I got to an age where I could be collecting comics and was had enough consciousness in my brain. It had been a good 10 or 12 years into when post-crisis started, and I felt like I just sort of always missed out on being a part of this huge epic beginning of something. And I'm really excited to be a part of that now, if you can't tell by my massive excitement in the shakiness of my voice. But I do want to start moving more into talking about the titles that I will be covering, and some of the things that we will be doing content-wise, some dates to look out for, and the different content we will be covering. But there will definitely, I'm sure, circle back to more about myself in future shows. But I am just so unbelievably excited to have everybody involved in this with me. Man, this is really starting to look really good. I really like the color palette that I chose to do this with. Now, I'm not going to be covering every single title for Dawn of DC. They've only announced what is being released from the beginning of this year through June. So we still have a whole second half of the year of newer titles. Is there going to be a Flash title? Is there going to be a title, and who's going to be doing it? There's still more that I'm excited to find out that's still even to be, possibly released. But from what we know so far, title-wise, I would say there's around a dozen to 15 titles that are going to be going through. And I'll be covering around 10 or 12 titles. Now, one of them is going to be a Marvel title. It's my only Marvel title, which is going to be Spider-Man, because I love Spider-Man. Everybody loves Spider-Man for the most part. Spider-Man is the most popular and sellable character of all comics, like regardless of what company you're talking about. So if I want to also try to lure in Marvel fans or just people who are very just like got their toes dipped in the pool for comics but never really jumped all the way into the deep end, Spider-Man is a good way to lure people in because everybody loves Spider-Man. And I can also love like puns and plays on words, so I can't resist having a Spider Monday day. So on Mondays, I will probably most likely be doing stuff with Spider-Man. The run that I will mostly be covering is the run that John Romita Jr. Started not too long ago. There are a few volumes in. They're just starting a new story arc right now after the Dark Web arc, but I will absolutely start it from the beginning as I share it so that everybody can see it from the beginning. And then once we're caught up, then I'll be unveiling them as the new issues come out. John Romita Jr.'s run is the first run that I've honestly really enjoyed and loved since like the 70s to 90s Spider-Man, because that's what I grew up loving comic book wise for Spider-Man. I loved Roger Stern's like late 70s into early 80s run, and then absolutely fell in love with Dave Michelin and Todd McFarlane's like run, who like invented Venom and the symbiotes and a lot of the characters. Like Roger Stern invented Hobgoblin, who I love, but like David Michelin and Todd McFarlane inventing like Venom and the symbiotes was like such a huge thing. But specifically the art by them, like that thick ropey webbing that so many people love and are used to from, you know, my generation and future generations that's common in Spider-Man now, or the very big drawn eyes, you know, that was McFarlane and Dave Michelin there, and they you know, that art to me was always such a huge inspiration, in my opinion, to the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, which like I loved the art from that cartoon, and that's one of the things that just made me like that was Spider-Man to me, and still kind of like is today. I also love Ditko's work, but like at the same time, like that era, like after their times sort of ran out and they got into the 2000s, I sort of fell away more from Spider-Man comics. So John Romita Jr.'s run here is the first one I'm really, really enjoying since then. And I'm really excited to share that with people. Also, I'm such a huge Robin fan. My first collection I'll be sharing with everybody through this year is my Robin collection. It mostly focuses on Dick Grayson and Tim Drake, because those are my two favorite Robins. But obviously showing Stephanie Brown, Jason Todd, and a lot of the other ones that have their roles and parts to play, like in the chronology, will be covered as well. But in terms of like Robin stuff that I will collect, it's always going to be, you know, Tim Drake. Like now that Dick Grayson is Nightwing. So the fact that Tim Drake has his own series finally again now, which technically started before the dawn of DC. They only did one small story arc, 5 issues so far, which I will show off to people, and then we will be caught up. But I have a really good feeling that will end up tying itself into Dawn of DC stuff, the similar way that Nightwing is basically a part of Dawn of DC, even though it was already going Tom Taylor's run before that. But the Tim Drake series by Megan Fitzmartin, that's one that we will be covering, and I'm very excited to share with people that Tim gets to really, you know, have this run now, and that him and Bernard like get to be together like really now, and that gets to be shown very heavily in this comic run. It's very, very important since his DC Pride coverage. That's been it's been a huge deal for me. I've loved that. But in terms of like the 12 to 15 main Dawn of DC titles that I will be covering, these ones I'm only going to be covering about 10 of them. There's going to be a couple that I won't be, and I apologize for that, but it's really just I'm focusing more on the ones that I feel like are going to be the main ones. There is one that's an outlier one that just seemed very interesting to me that I selected, but for the most part I'm focusing on more of the main ones, and I had to focus on budget. Like I really am, you know, really stressed for funds right now. I'm currently in between my employment, and since I'm not performing now, like my income level is is much lower. So I really don't have too much that I can be spending, so I had to be very strategic about which ones I was going to be covering. So I'm going to go through like my list here now, so everybody can start having some dates in mind. If like there's one that stands out where they're like, ooh, I really only care about, following Green Arrow because I love Green Arrow. Well, then I'll explain like what date like the Green Arrow ones will start coming in, and etc. So the ones that are already on their way to me, that on March 1st I will be unboxing, and it'll be our first show off of Dawn of DC Comics, is going to be the Nightwing 101, or what is the Nightwing issue 1 of Dawn of DC. I'll have that one. And then Superman, Kal-El's just main one by Joshua Williams, and the art by Jamal Campbell. Superman's issue 1, I'll be covering those two on March 1st. That's going to be our first unboxing video, so look out for that. Those two I'll be covering. And then Adventures of Superman Jonathan Kent by Tom Taylor, with the art by Clayton Henry. I'll be covering that one. That series starts very soon. March 7th will be the first one, so we'll be right into that one pretty soon. And then we have Superboy, Man of Tomorrow, which is Kenny Porter, and the art's by Janoy Lindsay. That comes out April 18th. I'm very excited for that one. That one won the DC Round Robin competition. It's a 6-part miniseries that I really hope ends up extending into something more. I really loved Con-El, Connor Kent, the clone there of Superman, half Superman and half Lex Luthor. That's on and off been a big part of Teen Titans or Young Justice or other groups at different points. He's really going off on his own, out into the cosmos to really like find himself and go through like that type of period of self-identity. And I just think it's a tremendous series that's going to be very big and popular for these newer, younger generations. And I think I'm just very excited about it. But that one comes out April 18th. That's when that one starts. The Green Arrow by Joshua Williams starts April 25th. The Shazam series, which is going to be done by Mark Waid and Dan, but the Green Arrow series comes out April 25th. The Shazam one, which is going to be a very amazing comedy action funny one by Mark Waid and Dan Mora, who were a part of the Batman Superman World Finest creative duo, comes out the 2nd of May. And that one promises a lot of crazy wackiness with like space dinosaurs from space, wacky aliens, mad scientists, like all sorts of like just really nuts stuff. So I'm really excited for the Shazam series as well. Green Lantern is supposed to have a Hal Jordan and a John Stewart run separately. The John Stewart one was supposed to already have started, but unfortunately there was a bunch of delays and stuff that's happening with it, so it's sort of TBA right now, so I don't have any updates on that, but I will eventually subscribe to that one when it starts. John Stewart, of course, was the one of the really early famous black superheroes. He was Black Green Lantern, and John Stewart's writing has always been so tremendous, like in my opinion. I've loved it, but I've always been such a huge Hal Jordan fan as well. So I'm very excited to be doing Hal Jordan's one by Jeremy Adams. That starts the 9th of May. And then the Weird Off one, but the one that's more not part of a normal character that you're accustomed to, like in DC, is this one that is part of the DC Legends initiative, which is pushing more Asian culture. But there's a lot of more Asian culture-based comics this time in Dawn of DC, and I'm very excited about that. This new comic series that's called City Boy really drew my attention, which is a boy in DC who the protagonist is Asian and can communicate with cities, like with the cities themselves. So every city, like Metropolis, Gotham, like all the different ones, they have their own different personalities, and it reminded me a lot of like the Doom Patrol TV show that's been on HBO Max, if anyone's familiar with it, where they did the story arc about the road intersection that was like, that had sentience, that like communicated and was alive. And I just feel like it's such an interesting premise, and I feel like there's so much can be done and said with that, but it also feels like a lot of the adventures and things, the way it could be entangled with other characters when the character goes throughout different cities and could possibly run across like Nightwing or Superboy or Superman, or Jonathan Kent, or these different people. And like the way that they could that the character could help them out by communicating with these cities and getting to know these cities like personalities. I just think it's just a really cool concept, so I'm very excited about that. But other than that, that one comes out May 23rd. Other than that, though, that's mostly what I'm going to be covering. Like I said, I didn't want to dump too much on everybody just in this intro video. We'll have a lot more time to get to know each other and get to know stuff that we're going to be doing. Like I said, I will end up be doing some giveaway stuff eventually after my first month, once I start to really settle in with my content videos here and get a good routine going. I'll have some cool giveaway things very similar to like what you see on like Whatnot and some other sites where you can like bid and win some comics. So that will be fun. So look out for more information on that. But thank you all for your patience and time with me. And I again apologize for my aggressive rambling or talking too fast if it's been hard for you to pick up some of the information. But yeah, this drawing has been. It really turned out really well. I really like this more like logo-ish that I've sort of like created more for my show here. I hope everybody has a great rest of their week, and please join us on the 1st of March for our first Dawn of DC comics reveals. And thank you for joining me. Have a great one. Bye.